Good afternoon and welcome to another Select Stream. I'm Jig Better and I'm joined by my co-hosting colleague Tess Parsons-Broom. Today we'll be discussing the dark web. What is it? How does your personal details end up there? And what you and your organisation can do to mitigate the risk. My guest today is our cybersecurity expert and technical solutions architect, Russell Gower-Leech.
How we doing?
Oh, very well, thank you. So I think we should mainly start with the big question. What is the dark web?
It's a good question to start with because, if we're going to talk about what you should worry about and how you're going to protect yourself, a bit of understanding as to what is even being referred to is probably very important. So there's a bit of a kind of history lesson. So the dark web is something that actually started way back in the early days of the internet, and it was an idea to try and secure the internet. The internet as a whole isn't as secure as we necessarily take for granted. A lot of the traffic and information that goes back and forth is kind of clear text or out in the open. And I think effectively when we talk about the dark web, what more often than not is being referred to as a thing called Tor. There are various other kind of versions of the dark web. And essentially, it's just a network that uses the internet to connect one end to the other. We did have a slide, ironically, that kind of gives you a visual representation of how the internet as a whole is kind of broken up. Think about it like an iceberg. You've kind of got this very top layer with all the stuff that you can just get to all the time without any authentication or without any real kind of effort or legwork, and that's kind of what's referred to as the surface web, the stuff above the waterline. You then got what's referred to as the deep web, and that's actually the biggest chunk of the iceberg of the internet. That's the stuff that you need to log into in some way to actually get access to. And then right at the very bottom, about 6% worth, you've got the dark web, and that's this network within a network. And the idea originally came about from kind of the Naval Research Lab, where they spotted the fact that with certain kind of internet activities, a lot of information is kind of given away. So a kind of a good example of that at the moment is, let's say you go to a website on your laptop and then you hit the same website on your phone, you get a slightly different experience on the screen. The website looks different. The reason it's doing that is your browser is actually telling the site, hey, I'm on this device and I'm using this browser, and it will actually customize and tailor the output to better suit what you're using. Along with that, it'll kind of tell the site you're visiting your public IP address, so where you're coming from. That address can actually be used to geolocate you to a degree. Don't get too paranoid about it. It'll find the local internet exchange and local ISP breakout point that you're getting to. And also, when you make requests to the internet, we as people use words and names. Computers work with numbers. So whenever we type in an address like www.amazon.co.uk, that will get converted into a number that the machine can then use to go and find the website you're after. And that whole request process, that hey, I'm looking for this, where is it, is sent in the clear. The DNS is not typically secured. So from a security point of view, if you think about it, if you're kind of involved in the chain, you can gather enough information, you can get a sense of what people are looking at, roughly where they are, what type of device they're using. And so from a security point of view, what the Naval Research guys were looking at was how they could better protect communications for their operatives. And that's where they kind of came up with this idea of the Tor network, or the onion router. The reason they called it that is because an onion has layers. So from an architectural point of view, using the Tor network, you're effectively going from where you are now to where you want to be, the endpoint, the website you're visiting. And there are several hops in between. Each hop is a layer of protection. There's encryption that happens, and each hop only knows about the one before it and the one after it. It can't see the full end to end. So you kind of gain some of your anonymity and some of your protection that way. This kind of concept moved on and was originally made open source and then kind of pushed out to the general public in part of the Tor project. And the reason I say it's a good thing, so the dark web's kind of demonized a little bit. It's a good thing because not everybody can enjoy freedom of information or freedom of speech. There are plenty of countries out there where the internet is very heavily censored. Your ability to access information is very heavily controlled. And Tor kind of circumnavigates that. This network within a network allows you to kind of break out from those oppressive means, and it's used a lot by journalists to talk confidentially to sources. It'll be used by whistleblowers. You've got the likes of Edward Snowden and people like that. And it can be used again to protect people's fundamental right to freedom of information and freedom of speech. Unfortunately, if you imagine from a security point of view, it's good for hiding what you're up to and where you're going. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. If it's good for masking security operatives and people who are a bit kind of privacy conscious, it's good for criminals as well.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to take advantage, and effectively what they set up are kind of underground marketplaces. One of the kind of most well-known ones early on was Silk Road, where the guys there were basically selling narcotics over the internet. There's actually quite a good film if you want to, or documentary if you want to go and look at that. But there are other things out there, and whilst we don't want to differ into too dark a territory, what we want to focus on is kind of the information element to the dark web. So whether you know it or not, all of your information has some sort of value. Your personally identifiable information can be used for things like identity fraud. It can be used to take out loans and finance in your name. We did have a great little slide from Experian, which actually kind of highlights some of the different values that bits of PII are worth. Medical information, as you can imagine, is one of the most valuable. Two main reasons for that. Number one, not everybody has access to things like a nationally funded health service that we're fortunate enough to have. So medical treatment for them may be prohibitive. So if you've got some medical information that you've been able to procure via illicit means, you can go and get treatment for something. You can sell that information on to someone else who may need treatment. Or more popularly, you can set up a fake doctor's practice and effectively defraud the insurance company. You know, you make claims against a person to say, hey, we've treated this person, we've used all these drugs and bits and pieces, here's the bill, and the insurance company pays out.
That sounds similar to the sort of problems that are happening with the COVID finance grants for individual companies.
Yeah, very, very similar. I mean, that's one of the interesting things. A lot of this sort of stuff, the mechanisms for the fraud are nothing really new, but it's the kind of social wave that they're riding is always different. So, you know, there's a lot of people taking advantage of the COVID crisis, taking advantage of tax breaks, taking advantage of the furlough schemes and things. Wherever there is insurance or money, there's going to be fraud, basically.
It's a scary thought, really, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's the same old racket, isn't it? One of the things that wasn't on the experience slide that we want to focus on is kind of your identity online, and that's kind of where dark web monitoring as a whole kind of comes into it. When you're online, you're typically using your email address to authenticate yourself to stuff, to websites, to services. That will typically be, you know, you'll have one or two email addresses, one work, one personal, maybe a couple of personal ones. But that email address becomes your identity online. And because you use it everywhere, if it's leaked in some way, if that information gets out there, it's fairly easy to find out where else it might be used. And then the cyber criminals can then use that information to go and get into those systems, gather further information about you that again could be valuable. They could bundle it up and sell it off as PI. Or they could use it to defraud other services that you might have. You know, video streaming services are a very popular thing, certainly without anybody being able to go anywhere. So if you can get kind of free Netflix from somebody, then why not?
Definitely. I love a bit of free Netflix.
The more scary bit is the way it kind of acts as a bit of a gateway and it can spread. When you think about what level of access someone could have to your life by having access to some of your online accounts, more often than not, they could get into things like your email, your social media, and that actually then creates a bit of a springboard for them to get into other people in your life. I think we've talked about this before in one of our other webinars where, if you get an out of the blue message from somebody you've never heard of saying, hey, click this link, you're not going to click it more often than not. But if you're getting a link from a close friend or family member saying, hey, click this, it's hilarious, or you should look out for that, your guard's going to be down, and that's going to allow these guys to kind of hop onto the next person. And it's a bit of a circular kind of situation, because the obvious question is, how does this stuff get out there? How does my PII get online? How is my identity got online? And it's through this whole kind of credential thing. There actually is. I don't know, we've got this. Are the slides up and running now, guys? It's kind of an idea of how different incidents happen, how information gets out there, and it's a number of different things. If you get malware or something on your machine, that can gather bits of information off your machine. You'll have things stored and cached on your device that it might be able to grab and siphon off. Ransomware is quite a common thing these days. It used to be a case they just encrypted your data and held you to ransom. Now, what they do is they copy your data, encrypt it, and hold you to ransom, because they've now got the data to expose to add more pressure to you. And this whole notion that if you pay the ransom, they're going to delete the stuff off is a bit of a misnomer, because why would they? That information is valuable. They're going to get the money out of you from the extortion, then they're going to bundle up the valuable information they've nicked from you and then sell it on again.
Is that normally what happens? So even if companies do pay a ransom, they tend to, I suppose, how do they prove that they've deleted the information anyway?
That's the problem. You're taking it on faith, and let's be fair, this person's getting money at a duress. So how much goodwill do you want to throw their way and believe they're going to delete it? So it's more than likely that they're not really going to get rid of that stuff. There's a monetary value to the stuff they've stolen from you, and they're going to exploit that to their own gain.
So even if you pay the ransom in the hope you'll get your data, you might get your data back, and you hope that they never share it openly, and it's just a bit of a hope, isn't it? That's a scary thought.
You're only going to hope for the best. The other kind of big contributor to things like stolen credentials and loss of access to your accounts is actually phishing. So phishing is kind of attributed to the vast majority of breaches these days. And the reason phishing works, I mean, again, I think to probably recap, we're all familiar with phishing. Hopefully you get the email that says, hey, there's a problem with your account, or you need to do something. Phishing is very much a psychological trigger to get you to do something that's not necessarily in your best interest. What we quite commonly see is, at the moment, people try and take advantage, as you said, Jig, the coronavirus crisis. Hey, we're from the government. Did you know you can get a tax break if you're being furloughed, or we're offering funds for this, that, and the other? Click here and sign in and give us your details.
Yeah.
A lot of the common phishing attempts tend to be trying to grab credentials kind of these days, because once they've got that, again, it's a gateway into other things. Whether we realize it or not, a lot of people will reuse passwords. So once one account's been leaked, chances are a lot of other accounts are left vulnerable. So we've got a bit of a demo about actually how phishing works, just to give you an idea. And can I share my screen, guys? Let's have a go.
Yeah.
Like I say, with phishing as a whole, there tend to be several kind of emotional triggers. It's either the kind of fear of authority, you need to do something because we're the tax officer telling you to do so, or you've got the kind of fear of losing out. We've noticed some suspicious activity on your account, or your account's about to be suspended. So you need to log in and prove that you're still using it.
So it creates a bit of an urgency, a moment to distract you from what's actually happening.
Exactly, yeah. And one of my kind of favourite kind of motivators is kind of the guilty pleasure a little bit.
The guilty pleasure.
Yeah, so it's kind of you've had something shared with you, and again, file sharing is another kind of very common thing these days, where especially with everyone working remotely, everyone is sharing content to kind of work more optimally. But what would you do if you were sent, you were shared a document from somebody you knew or somebody from in the workplace that wasn't meant for you? What are you going to do with it? Are you going to open it or are you going to get rid of it?
I mean, I'm on camera going to say I would not open it.
Well done. But yeah, it's the guilty pleasure, the temptation. I think you and I talked about this a little while ago, Jig, where you were getting kind of phishing emails asking for feedback. We value your input on this stuff, and they're asking you to sign in and give up information. Again, it's rather than trying to apply negative pressure. It was a positive kind of coaxing, and I quite like the guilty pleasure. So
yeah, I bet that was Curry's PC World or something like that. And like, I haven't bought anything, but it was just enough to go, oh, please provide us your feedback and log into this. And you're like, wait a minute, I didn't.
Yeah.
Just on the off chance that you may
anything.
It was very similar to something you actually bought, wasn't it? That was a weird thing about it.
Yeah, exactly. It was. Yeah, it was literally the thing that was an item I had bought, but not from Curry's as well.
Wow, that's quite scary.
That's
either coincidental or
yeah,
he's stalking you.
Yeah. So yeah, there's various different kind of emotional triggers, and they're all designed to get you to do something you wouldn't necessarily do. And I'm going to go with guilty pleasure here. So in this instance, I've been shared some important HR information, and not working in HR, I'm definitely going to open it because it could be quite juicy. So
yeah. We don't condone that you do this.
No, this is purely for entertainment purposes only. So what I've been presented with is a login page, and I'm kind of expecting that. So the email is a OneDrive shared item, so I'm going to expect to see some sort of need for authentication because yeah, it's a sensitive document. Of course, I need to authenticate to it. So then what I'm going to do is log in, and for the eagle-eyed amongst you, so the right-hand side is kind of the victim screen. The left-hand side of this black box here is my attacker. And you will probably have noticed that it shows just down the bottom here that I've had a connection, and it's come from a Chrome-based device running Windows, which is bang on. That's Edge. Edge is Chrome-based. So again, this is how the browser kind of gives up some of your information.
So is the black screen like a tool that you've picked up somewhere along the way that allows you to?
Yeah, I don't want to plug the tool necessarily. No. I think props to the guys that made it. I don't want to kind of be seen to be condoning or endorsing.
Where can I download that from? And
yeah, yeah. But here is me signing in as a test account. There's no harm, no foul. What you will notice just here is it has grabbed the password I've pasted. It's grabbed the username. It's also grabbed some tokens, and tokens are an especially interesting thing because slight side tangent. Whenever you log into anything, doesn't matter what it is or how you've done it, whether using your retina, your finger, blood, sweat and tears, whatever. At the end of the day, it's always converted to a token once your authorization's passed, and that token gets passed around to the back-end system so that you can get to the resources you're meant to get to. And if you can grab that token and copy it, you can replay it, you can push it on. And what this allows you to actually do is authenticate as that user without actually having to know usernames, passwords, having their devices, anything.
Wow, really cool that's stuff. Scary.
You'll notice this is a bit slow to load up. It's the magic of Teams. When you run Teams on your machine, your bandwidth becomes something of a premium. But yeah, I'm now in as that person, and I've captured their credentials. Yeah, and that's just one of the ways these things can happen. And from the victim's point of view, it's all worked perfectly. You know, all right, I've not got access to the documents been shared with me. That's a bit weird. Or maybe they've unshared it or something like that. You know, I wasn't meant to get it anyway. Maybe I will reach out to ask that person, did you mean to send me that? Because I can't open it. But I've signed in and I'm able to crack on. Everything's working as it should do.
They just seem to have, they'll have what is a completely normal experience.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean,
seeing that the URL's a bit different.
Well, that's the thing. So there's a few kind of things to kind of call out on this. We've got kind of a summary of things to look out for at the end as kind of preventative measures. But yeah, You're absolutely right. The URL is totally bogus. That's me. It's got my name in it. And I've even got a certificate. Yeah, what I'm doing is totally valid. So, a lot of what you used to hear about when talking web security was make sure you got a certificate, you got a HTTPS, a secure connection that's protecting you and making sure your traffic's encrypted. That's great. But the traffic's going to me in this case. And yes, it's encrypted, but it's not where it's meant to go. So that's not always the best advice to kind of give out. So yeah, I mean, we'll come back to this at the end, but certainly whenever you get sent anything via an email, via social media message or whatever, take a little look at the link, hover over it. It can be difficult to tell the URL in some cases. Some of them are monstrously long and a bit unintelligible. But anything that looks super suspect, just don't click it. If you are getting a prompt from your bank or from whatever account you're using that says, hey, there's a problem with your account, you need to log in and take care of it, just go there separately. Don't click the link in the email, open up a fresh tab, go to that website, sign in normally. If there's a problem, there'll be messages and prompts there to kind of give you the download. Yeah.
I guess as well, Russ, just going back to what you were saying about the certificate for the site and everything, and that used to be seen as like, something to look out for, is being mindful that, like with anything with technology, things are moving along all the time. So the best advice is really to kind of always be aware of what at that point in time you should be aware of in terms of security, cybersecurity, I guess.
Yeah, so it's the whole kind of certificate and padlock in the browser thing is still valid when you're talking about logging into something. Whenever you log into anything, if it's not got the padlock, that should be a bit of an alarm bell, because it means your information is being sent without any kind of encryption. But don't take for granted that the certificate and the little padlock are really genuine. I mean, I set this up in about half an hour. That certificate was completely free, and I didn't really do an awful lot to make it work. So yeah, just be suspicious. Like I say, if you need to get to something, go there manually. I know it takes an extra few seconds to open a tab up and type it in rather than just click the link, but you're more likely to be kind of safer and better off that way. Yeah, if you can avoid clicking links inside of messages that are kind of out of the blue or a bit random, just don't.
Just don't do it.
Good advice.
Yeah, I say just always treat everything with suspicion. And to say the other thing is, if you are getting messages out of the blue from people that you do know or do work with, but they seem a bit off, start up another channel of communication with them. If they sent you an email, get them on Teams. If they've sent you a message on some sort of social media, get them on the phone. Just double check with them that they definitely sent this thing. And in some cases, it could be their account has been compromised and the attacker is using their account to send you the information, which is, again, you've now given them a bit of a heads up there's an issue. But don't just take for granted that you should click everything that comes into your inbox.
Yeah, I think our colleague who's producing this event, Nick, also mentioned about sort of making sure you're talking to the right person. And that weird thing that I don't know if you saw over the past couple of days, it's like a courtroom, but obviously done via Zoom in the US, and the lawyer is a cat. Yeah,
that was kind of human error, wasn't it? But that was brilliant. The eyes just made me laugh, just kind of looking worriedly around the room.
So funny, but also shows how easy it is to kind of hide your identity, even through like a live chat. Yeah. Are you really who you are, Russ?
I don't know. I don't know if I'd be more suspicious or less suspicious if you guys turned up as cats and things. It would certainly catch me off guard, put it that way.
Right, the next webinar, we'll turn up as cats.
Yeah, we should do that.
I'll jump in if I may and say the particular thing that struck me with that is actually that filter, combining that with stuff like deepfake, where you can actually superimpose other people's faces in relatively real time. I don't think it's quite there yet to be convincing, but it is one of those things that is on the horizon. That how are you going to confirm that the person you're on a video chat with is the person you think you're on a video chat with?
Well, that would be scary.
Isn't it?
It's actually.
Well, yeah, this is kind of the thing. I think if you're that worried about these sorts of things, just kind of cut the cables and go off grid, and that's probably
Right,
run away.
If the technology gets that good, it can do it all in real time, and it's that convincing. I think we're all in trouble. But yeah, it's a good point, and certainly I think for at the current kind of technology level, even having a dodgy camera might actually help you be more convincing, because all the fuzzy edges and rough bits might not look quite so out of place.
Yeah, you're right.
Too smooth. Something to be suspect of.
Yeah. But yeah, so kind of back to the topic.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we should be putting you back.
Yeah, so like I say, there's a lot of different ways your information can get out there. Your information is valuable, whether you know it or not. And what tends to happen is once the bad guys have got this information, depending on what their purpose is, it kind of depends on how they use it. So in some cases, just having access to your credentials, they'll kind of sell that information on, because obviously if they can get into a system, they can then rent out access to that system to some other criminal that may want to do something. They might want to have a botnet. They may want to try and deploy ransomware to you and take a look at what information you've got. Others will simply just take the information, bundle it up, and then sell it online. They'll basically create these kind of breach bundles and release them for a fee. And one of the kind of big contributors to this is kind of big business. It's not necessarily whether you and I as individuals have our machines or our accounts compromised. It's where else that information is stored. So in the last 5 years, there have been untold number of data breaches. You kind of seem to get one every couple of weeks. I think we've had Sony, Nintendo, Equifax, might be in the last 10 years rather than 5 years. Yeah, these big companies get targeted because they hold a huge amount of customer data. The data gets exfiltrated, bundled up, and sold. And if I actually share my screen again, funnily enough, we've got a little a little example. So as individuals, I like to try and advocate any kind of security to the individual person, to try and protect your privacy and your own data, and then I think that naturally will apply to protecting the business you work for. You know, you'll take good habits with you. And one of the things you can do is actually look up if any of your information has been found on the dark web. There are organizations out there that will trawl the forums and look for and gather the information, gather the breaches up, and they compile their own database, which basically lets you know whether you've been compromised or not. Have I been pwned is probably one of the more synonymous ones, and it's good for just everyday individuals to take a look at. I won't put in my actual email address, and I won't put in an email address of anybody that we know visibly. However, Blue Peter style, one I made earlier, I've popped in a fairly generic email address, and this poor person has appeared in a fairly staggering number of breaches. And again, that's not to say that's this person's fault at all. Each one of these companies down here holds some information pertaining to that person, and it's all tied together with their email address. Their email address is what I've popped into this, and obviously they've used that email address to sign into all of these different accounts, and all of these different companies have suffered an issue at some point. And what's really good about Have I Been Pwned, it tells you who the company was, when the breach happened, what that company does. It gives you an idea of what information might have been held. So you've got names, email addresses, passwords, and also where possible they tell you what kind of encryption was used. And a bit of a technical tangent, whenever a company is storing your information, they should be encrypting it and protecting it. There are instances of companies where they're not doing that, and I think there was one actually here, where the usernames and passwords are stored in what's referred to as plain text. And plain text is just actually stuff that you and I can read. So the bad guys have got in there, grabbed the text, there we go, and dumped it online. So now they have a clear view of your password. A responsible company, what they should do is be storing the information in a encrypted and secure format, so that the bad guys have actually got to go through some legwork and break that encryption and break that hash to reveal what your password should be.
Is that relatively easy for some hackers to do, or hackers to do?
It depends. It's kind of an economies of scale type thing. So it depends on how the passwords have, or how the information has been hashed and protected, and also what access to resources the attacker's got, and also the length of the password. So back in the mid 90s, you had the MD5 was kind of the hashing algorithm everyone went to. It's been broken for a number of years now. It's pretty quick and easy to decrypt.
Okay. But
Now,
even if it's encrypted, it's no guarantee.
No, the algorithm itself has obviously been broken and taken apart, and you can relatively easy decrypt the password. Nowadays, they're using much more secure methods like SHA-1, actually mentioned up there, but also a thing called salting, and salting effectively adds some additional values or additional patterns to your password encryption to make sure it may encrypt the password multiple times using a particular algorithm, or it may use a random value generated at a certain point and slip that in, so when it is hashed up, it's not quite so easy to reverse engineer. So it really does come down to how each company is treating the responsibility of holding this data for you, what investment they've made in the technology. And again, like I say, the length of password you set can be a good factor as well. The longer your password is, the more different permutations and variables there can be, therefore the longer it will take to break. There's a great great example, another technical tangent. You guys familiar with WPS, the little convenient button on your router? Yeah. So you want to connect something to the Wi-Fi in the house, you press the WPS button, you pair the device up. Nice and easy. You haven't got to worry about typing a code or anything like that. So WPS works by having, I think it's an 8-digit code. And in theory, there should be so many, tens of thousands of variables to this code. But what security researchers found was that if you drop the last digit off, the last digit, that kind of a padding, don't need it. So you're now down to 7 characters. The last 3 characters, so 5, 6, and 7, they're only validated once the first 4 have been validated. So instead of having to crack a 7-digit code, you're cracking a 4-digit code and then checking it against a 3-digit code. And that the different permutations go from the tens of thousands to a handful of thousands, significantly easier to do. So yeah, it all comes down to how well that algorithm has been implemented, and how long your password is, and how complex it is to really protect you against stuff like that.
Okay. Cool.
So you've got this is somebody's email address, but
yeah,
this is for the individual to go find out if they've been hacked, and then try and work out what email address, what passwords could have been used at time, and make sure that they've changed all their accounts and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so nowadays I think companies are a bit more responsible for disclosure. I think we probably hear about more breaches now because companies are so concerned about getting in trouble for not coming clean and saying there was an issue, we've detected this. A few years ago, I think a lot of the companies would have probably just sat on it or reported it to the authorities and not gone public at all.
Oh, the cyberpunk game creators released the fact that they've been hacked quite quickly, really.
Yeah, so CD Projekt Red. Yeah, and it's an interesting thing because I don't think you can measure a company by whether or not they've ever suffered a security incident, because on a long enough timeline, everyone's going to get involved in some sort of incident. How you handle it, I think, is a very good indication of what you should be measuring companies on. If if a business has had an issue, they've been very quick to identify it, respond to it, try and protect their customers, and ethically avoided paying ransoms and things like that. I think that's a company I would definitely kind of go back to. I wouldn't put them on the naughty list, so to speak. If I found out that a company had taken no care in protecting the details, had tried to hide it and cover it up, why on earth would you want to trust them again?
Exactly.
Yeah, that is true.
But so in some respects, again, you were hearing more about this information, and you'd like to think that companies are reaching out to their customers a lot more readily than certainly they used to be. But it's not a guarantee. And again, you look at some of this stuff. Some of these things happened in 2013.
Yeah, 2020, that Animal Jam one.
Yeah,
It's like a kid site as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so there may be some kind of skeletons lurking in the digital closet per se that you're not aware of. So I would encourage, and I'll set some people some homework. Go and visit Have I Been Pwned? Pop your personal email addresses in there. Take a look what's there. If you're lucky enough to have nothing, well done. I'm suspicious of that. I'd be surprised if everyone comes back clean. But yeah, whatever comes up in there, have a think about what password set on it. Go through the rest of the stuff that you find and think about what password is used for those accounts. I bet it's either very similar or probably the same. Yeah, there is a real habit at the moment of people reusing passwords. And I get why. Trying to set a strong, complex password is a pain. Even if you try signing up to a new website and you've got the little box at the bottom with all the green ticks telling you need to have upper and lower case, you want some numbers, it's got to have a certain length, can you chuck some special characters in there? And trying to get something in there that you're going to remember can be difficult and can be frustrating. So when you've got all the green ticks, that's a cracking password, I'm going to use that elsewhere, that's good, it's strong. And
yeah, you start yourself down a dangerous path there, aren't you?
Exactly, yeah.
So is there ways to help manage that scenario when you have loads of passwords? Or you should have passwords?
Yeah, I mean the obvious one is a password manager. I mean, I know some people have some reservations about a password manager. It's something else I'm going to have to look after. It's putting all my eggs in one basket, so to speak. But it's a lot easier to protect a single thing well than try and protect half a dozen things fairly mediocrely. So yeah, password managers are a really great way of taking away the hassle of thinking and finding strong, unique passwords and long passwords, because they'll generate them for you. They're a very good, secure way of storing them. Again, try and minimize the number of devices you put them on and things like that. And one of the other kind of cool things that password managers can do for you is certainly browser-based password managers. When you hit a website, if they know that the credentials were set for that site, they try and grab the URL when you set them. When you visit that site, they'll say, hey, I've got these details for you. Do you want to log in? And it can be a kind of one-click experience, which is great for convenience, but from a security point of view, can also give you a visual cue. Because if you're clicking a link that you think is genuine, you go to a login page that you've normally got credentials cached for, your password manager doesn't prompt you. Why is that? There's something up. Double check the address bar. Take another look. Oh no, I'm in the wrong place. If the password manager can't recognise it.
So in your example earlier, where it was evil, whatever it was,
Evil 365.
That would have.
That might be a bit obvious.
Would have gone, hello, this isn't right.
Well, that's the thing. So I took a deliberately obvious address. One, because I own the domain, and two, just a bit of fun. If you look at that web page, everything else looks absolutely perfect. The imagery is perfect. The text is nice and clear. The certificate is there, and the reason for that is the phishing system I'm using is basically just a proxy. It's completely transparent over the actual web page. So the actual web page is sitting there behind the scenes. I'm just sitting in the middle of it.
Kind of like just putting a window over it or something.
Yes, it works really, really well. Some of the phishing pages you'll come across, the logos might be a little bit out of date. The alignment might be slightly off. The quality might not be brilliant, and those can be some kind of visual cues. But no, even the address, to a degree, you can kind of mask. It's pretty easy to look up what subdomains and what similar domains a company might be using. So if you want to look up at Microsoft.com, for example, you might find that there's a Microsoft.com with the I is actually a capital L or something like that. It kind of stands out a little bit under close scrutiny, but under a quick glance, it'll look fine. Similarly with Google, you might have some zeros instead of O's. And you can look at buying domains like that, so they look similar enough.
But they just look the same.
Yeah, they'll pass a quick glance. The other method is I forget the term for it. It's a word I can't pronounce anyway. But there are a number of characters within the kind of computer alphabet, the ASCII code, that will look similar but have a different kind of character code behind the scenes. So what you see visually to the human eye might look like a C, to the machine seeing it as a completely different character, and it will take you to somewhere else. So that's quite a cool method of masking the domain. And what you'll find is big companies will actually buy up similar looking domains themselves. They'll proactively try and grab these things to stop it being exploited, but it's not always the case.
No. I guess that I don't know if you now want to go on to talk about the dark web monitoring tool. I've got my slide up.
Yeah, so this is a snippet from the actual tool we use. I can't show you the live portal because there's customer data in there. You know, we've got to be responsible for that. So what this enables us to do for the customers that have this service is we can look at the company domain. So any address that's found with that customer domain on it in any of the dark web forums, it'll flag up some results. And what you'll see on the screen is the email address that was found, the date it was found, where it came from in some cases. So in some instances, the breach itself will be disclosed. In other cases, it won't be. But also the kind of cool bit is this kind of middle column, which some of it looks a bit like gibberish. This is the password hint. So this is what
just
password.
Check everyone can see my screen.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, brilliant. Because I can't see if my screen's
Yeah. So yeah, that column there is what the password was found to be within the breach or the information that was shared online. And again, for us, when we talk to customers about this, we don't give them the whole revealed password. We have a kind of a partial piece of it. Again, bit of data privacy. We don't want to know your passwords necessarily, but if we give you enough of the password, when we go through this exercise with you, can see that oh yeah, I recognise that. Oh, I might have used that elsewhere. Right, let's go and change it. And that's the real kind of power of these types of things, of why we should look at the dark web. Is being forewarned is forearmed. If you know that your information has been breached somewhere, you can take action against it. You can go and change the password for that account. You can go and change the passwords for all the accounts that have that share that password, and you can go and turn on things like MFA and 2FA. So it becomes less and less of an issue. You're not going to kind of get everything. If we're totally honest, you know, from an ethics point of view, the system we use to gather the dark web information doesn't pay for breaches. So a breach that's just happened and you know, the cyber criminals are asking for money, we're not going to have access to that, because why would you feed that industry? You know, why would you want to give them money to get the information? What this system tends to do is trawl through the data that it all eventually becomes free. And that's the kind of scary bit. You know, when these breaches first come out, they are being kind of sold, and there is some no honor among thieves, where people are buying the same databases, bundling them together and reselling themselves. But eventually what you tend to find is that it just becomes freely available. Someone gets it and just goes, you know what, I'm going to leak it all. And that may be they're doing it to prove how clever they are, doing it for the S&Gs. Some people may be doing it ethically. You know, I've bought this and I'm going to expose it so everyone's aware. But yeah, you're never going to be completely on top of it per se, but this is a great way of mitigating a lot of the risk and giving yourselves a heads up that some of your accounts are visible.
Cool. And with this tool, how often would we use this for a customer? How often do we sort of put all their data through the tool?
Well, we can do one-off assessments. So we typically will do a one-off assessment when we set this thing up for a customer. So, you know, you're coming on board with this service, we'll feed the domain in. Here is everything that it has found, and let's now take action against that. Okay. After that, it basically checks kind of frequently and constantly, basically. So as soon as this information is found and trawled, it's all automated. That's when we can say, right, there has been an alert. This has been found in the last 24 hours. Let's go and do something about it.
Okay, amazing. So it's just always kind of there in the background, so you can be notified as soon as something, not a breach, but, you know, some data is compromised.
Yeah, as soon as humanly possible, basically.
Cool. Okay. Go to the next slide, which is kind of finishing off and talking about what things, I suppose the dark web monitoring tool and all the things you talked about are great at kind of finding out in hindsight whether you've been hacked or, you know, details have been leaked. But I guess prevention is obviously better than the cure. So it'd be good if you could talk us through these things.
Yeah, it's a recap of the stuff we've already covered, but
Yeah.
you're right. Prevention is better than cure, if at all possible, and that's one of the things you got to kind of accept that even if you do everything right, there's still a chance that you're not going to be 100% covered. You're just mitigating the possibility. So things like keeping stuff up to date. The older your software and your systems get, the more holes there are, the more possible ways that they can be exploited. So by keeping them up to date, you're less likely to have an issue. And this goes for absolutely everybody, whether it's me as an individual with the laptop and bits and pieces in the house, to companies. Patching often and patching early, more often than not, will give you more protection and less issues. I know there's a bit of there can be fear about the whole kind of keeping things as up to date as humanly possible. Certainly,
I hate doing updates on my phone.
Yeah,
everything slow down.
Well, this is it. I think that they're less of an issue these days. I personally find that if I ignore an update, it actually starts slowing things down. So it's better to be on top of it. So yeah, there's less danger these days in doing. I know a lot of kind of suspicious IT folks are that's a hassle. That's bound to go wrong. It's a Microsoft update. Those days are kind of behind us more often than not. You're better off keeping up to date.
Okay.
Yeah, having unique passwords for all your different accounts. I mean, like I say, password reuse is a real issue. And if you are using the same password in multiple places, all they've got to do is get it once, and they can pretty easily find where else you're using it and kind of spread through. So a password manager I would recommend to anybody. It's a really easy way of creating these unique passwords, keeping track of them. And like I say,
that you would sort of recommend in particular, Ross?
There's a few different ones. LastPass and OnePass are pretty big names that people will have heard. Well, I don't know if I should name the one I use. Might be might be painting a target on myself.
Other password managers are available.
Other password managers are available, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Take a look at them. Look at what they offer you. Some things to kind of look out for is, can it plug into the browser, and will it automatically fill in details when it hits a page I often visit? Because that's one, it's convenient, and two, when that doesn't happen, that can give you a little cue that something's up. There can be password managers that can integrate into things like MFA. So from a business point of view, you shouldn't be sharing accounts for anything wherever possible, but it's not always possible. There may be a situation where there is a generic account that 2 or 3 people in the team need to have. And having MFA can be a little bit impractical because MFA tends to be tied to a device. It tends to be tied to a person. Yeah. Some of the more modern password managers have an MFA feature, and it becomes tied to the platform rather than an individual person. So that's a good feature to look out for. Also, some password managers can give you a prompt that you've actually got weak passwords. If you import all the passwords that are currently stored in your browser, which you shouldn't do, it can actually give you a heads up, say, hey, did you know this password appears like 8 times? Did you know it's terrible? It's too short. It's not complex enough. Go and deal with that now, please. So I really recommend a password manager.
Okay.
MFA. Anyone who's ever listened to an IT person talk about security is bored of MFA, but genuinely, it is kind of the closest thing to a silver bullet. It's not perfect. No one measure is perfect in its own right, but MFA will make you significantly more secure, and I would argue for no real hassle. I think one of the objections I hear a lot of the times about MFA is it's a pain. I've got to type the little code in, and it's too fast on the phone. You're using the wrong MFA. Is the answer to that. There are multiple different forms of MFA out there. The little countdown one-time code it's fairly terrible. I don't like it because you've got to try and get the code in before it changes, and if you're catching it towards the end of its cycle, it's a pain. You're sitting there waiting for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, which is now seen as a barrier. It's stopping me doing what I'm meant to be doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Similarly, SMS-based one-time codes, you've got to wait for the messages to come through, and we hear a lot about things like SIM jacking and stuff like that. And there are a number of apps that you can get on your phone that have access to your messages, so that's not the best thing to do. The best kind of MFA is a push-based MFA. Literally, you'll pump in your details, your phone will ping and say, hey, you're trying to log in, yay or nay. click yay, done. There's no real friction to that. And this very 2-second inconvenience to you adds a whole heap of inconvenience to somebody trying to exploit your account. You know, they've got to go through a lot more hoops to try and circumnavigate it than just having a copy of username and password.
Oh, yeah, you've got access to whatever device you're using for that MFA.
This is it. Yeah, they've got to either have access to your device or be able to clone it in some way. And again, this all adds layers of complexity. And what a lot of criminals will do is just go for the low-hanging fruit. I mean, I'm not going to say they're lazy. They're just going to go for the best return on investment.
Yeah.
If it's a particularly targeted attack, then yeah, they may go the extra mile to clone your phone, you know, SIM jack your account, things like that.
I guess at that point they know that they're after something particular. They know what the end goal is.
And that's, yeah, you need to be a kind of a high value target to warrant the effort. What we're talking about here is if your details are just kind of sprayed out in some big list, you're not really a target per se, you're collateral damage, you're just a name and a number. So if you have MFA on your account, they're just going to move on. Why waste the effort? The other thing, these kind of two things kind of go hand in hand. They might my favourite because I'm quite antisocial is be suspicious and don't overshare. We've kind of covered it. Yeah, if you're getting messages out of the blue from people you don't know, delete them. Don't care what it is, just delete it. If you're having emails that are sent to you from things you sort of know something about or from people you are aware of, but that there's something not quite right, just don't click any of the links. You know, if you need to go to whatever platform it claims to be and check your account's okay, do that separately. Get on the phone to whoever has sent you this message and double check that it genuinely came from them. More often than not, they've got no idea that you've received it, or it could be a case that they've been compromised and they'll appreciate the heads up. So just be suspicious on that. And the oversharing thing kind of comes more into whether you're being targeted or not. You know, we tend to have fairly predictable habits as people. You know, a lot of the passwords and security information we give out is stuff about our lives, pets' names, football teams we like, music and movies and things like that. And this is all stuff that's kind of easily accessible via social media. So avoid trying to use stuff like that can be used against you. One of the things like one of my kind of pet hates is security questions. If ever you're signing up to something and they want some sort of recovery method and your only option is a security question, one, really think about, do I want to sign up to this platform or do I want to go somewhere else that does the same thing? Because the security questions, like I say, they tend to be fairly generic. Street you were born in, school you went to, stuff that it's not too difficult to find. But if you are forced to go down that road, make it up. Just go crazy. Just fill in some random stuff. Yeah.
What school did you go to? Hogwarts.
Yeah.
I mean, the exact same thing.
Yeah. What was the name of the street you were born on? Chartreuse Octopus. No one's going to guess that. The challenge with that, obviously, is you've got to remember this stuff. Although you're making it up and making it obscure, you've got to try and remember it. And again, that's where a good password manager can come in, because a lot of them can store secure notes, so they're locked away inside that account. So, like I say, two birds with one stone there. And also, if you are signing up to something, but you don't need to give it information. So I've got a couple of accounts that I've set up for things, and it asks for my address, postcode, telephone number. They're not required fields. Well, I'm not filling that in. I'm not giving money to them, so there's no financial transaction to need an address from. I'm not getting it delivered to me, so there's no need for the address. Why am I going to give them that information? On the off chance they have some sort of security issue, that information is now going to get grabbed. So why would I put it in there?
In those scenarios, I'd also recommend your throwawayable email address that you might have, an email account that you don't care about, to do those sorts of things. And have an email account, just for payment stuff or stuff that's you actually care about. If it's one of those things you just need to log into, you're not going to use it regularly. You just want to go into it and see it for one occasion. Yeah, I've got one of those emails. There's loads of accounts on there, all dodgy passwords that just make no sense. None of them have the right address or telephone number. The only thing that's the same is that one email address, and I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't think I use my name in there either. I'm very often test in that account.
Yes, just don't overshare. Don't give away information you don't need to disclose.
Yeah.
And the last thing is look into dark web monitoring. I say, as an individual, go and take a look at things like Have I Been Pwned. There are other ones out there, and you can kind of sign up to it, and it will give you a notification that if any detections occur after you've done the kind of the one-off check. From a business point of view, have a word with the IT department, have a word with your boss. Is this something that the business is providing? Should we be looking into it? Come and talk to us if you want to look at the service we use, but just go and take a look at it. Again, being forewarned is forearmed, and it can make a big difference.
Yeah. Thank you, Russ. I'm just looking, we don't seem to have any questions at the moment, but if anyone has any last minute questions, please ask them now. You can do it in the right hand panel of this meeting. So give a couple of minutes, see if anyone's got any questions. But no, thank you, Russ. It was very insightful. I now feel like I need to go and set up Password Manager, because I have to be honest, I don't have one. So if I've learned anything from this, it's that I should really go and set that up right now.
Have you been and looked at all the different breaches you might be on or not?
I have, yes, I had 5, which I don't think is too bad.
No, that's fine. But
Things
how
like
many?
I've had my email address for about 15 years. So that's like one,
One every 5 years.
Every 3 years.
3 years, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how many of them use the same password though? How that a bit of homework work?
I think they all use the same password.
They don't anymore, do they? No.
Yeah. So what I always find quite good is when you forget your password as well, because then you have to set a new one up. I do that quite a lot. I don't know if that's a good idea or not.
Yeah, it can be an interesting kind of mechanic, can't it? Because if the thing you lose access to is the email account that's used to recover all your other accounts, then someone can take advantage of it. So again, don't just do the one thing, do all the things. Make sure you've got a strong password for that account, and you've got the MFA on it. Just make it as hard as possible for them to exploit it. Oh,
well, we don't seem to have any other questions, but thank you so much, Russ. It's very insightful. And like you said, you can get in touch with us. You can get in touch with Russ directly. I think we've got his details in the panel here. So if you did want to find out any more, you can link in with him and contact him that way, or you can go to our website. You can get in touch with us. We can arrange a dark web monitoring, a free check if you sign up for that service. So yeah, great. Anything else you'd like to add, anyone, or should we say goodbye?
I think that'll do.
Yeah,
that'll do.
Thanks for everyone's time.
For coming along.
Thanks, Russ.
Yeah, thank you, Russ. Thanks, Nick, for being our producer for the day. Thank you all.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.